My wife just opened an entry-level BI analyst job that requires 1 year of experience and got 1,400 applications in 2 business days. HR is reviewing the applicants and then sending 50 people a day to her. That's going to take like 7 weeks. Like the supply demand curve is that crazy. Young people haven't been old yet. Like it is really hard to expect them to empathize with an experience that we actually 100% guarantee they haven't gone through before. When it comes to coaching people who are over 40 or over 50 or over 60, we have to remember the things that are probably going through their head.
People really do have to go to great lengths to stand out. So tell us a little bit about how you advise your clients to do just that.
What you want to do when they ask you for a number is you say, can you tell me what the 0.8 comp ratio is for this level in this location? So respond with them with a single number, because if they'll give you that number, then what you can do.
Welcome to It Gets Late Early. Today, I have with me Brian Pulliam, who is an ex-tech employee of 23 years. He spent time at places like Microsoft, Coinbase, and Zillow, so some pretty big companies. And he has since been in career coaching for about 18 years. And he is here to tell us all what the heck is going on in tech. So thanks so much for being here, Brian.
Yeah, happy to be here, Maureen. Thanks for having me on.
I'm pumped. So tech seems like it's had like year after year of complete meltdowns from the employee perspective. Like if You're looking at the year 2025, 2026, like should anyone be going into this industry? What's your take?
Yeah, this is tricky because, if you think about how people have been traditionally educated in tech, most of us go to college and then we go do this thing. And so there's this lead time of like firing a shot 4 years early and hoping we hit a target of success later when we get out. So the people going into tech now went into tech, or probably started taking computer science classes like 2 or 3 years ago. The way I describe the tech industry, having been in it for so long, is that it goes through seasons. And so there's this season like a winter, which is, the crappy part where it's really hard to land a job. And you need to, if this was Alaska, I would need to have cut a lot of firewood and stored a lot of food in order to survive these leaner times. What's been trickier for the past maybe 8 to 10 years is that there's a lot of different seasons we've gone through. And the challenge with the tech seasons is they're not determinate in length like they are when you live in an area, right? And it's like, Maureen and I both live in the Northwest. And so, October is when it is sunny, but it starts to get cold and now it's starting to get dark. We expect that because we've lived here. But in tech, those seasons, they come and go unexpectedly. And sometimes we skip seasons. So you can go from a winter straight to a summer. So while there was an AI boom, there was a lot of people hiring because there's money around. But even things like interest rates and how much big tech is hiring if you live near a tech hub, those all kind of play into, is it a good time to get into tech or not? So back to your question, is now a great time to go into tech? Not really, and not only because it's a winter seasonally where it's harder to get a job now than before, but AI is also sort of this extra like what kettlebell that we're carrying around on our back that's making it really hard for people because AI is now being used to do the jobs that apprentices or journeymen used to do to learn how to be more senior. Well, I mean, the tech industry is kind of shooting itself in the foot by not continuing to invest in these junior people because there will be no more senior people at some point if they don't grow folks. But a lot of companies are, retracting how much of a long-term investment they want to make in individuals. Like there's so many people looking for a job that a lot of employers are like, well, why should I have to train a junior? Why don't I just go hire one of these 1.2 million people who are unemployed in tech or whatever the number is now? It's very high. When the supply demand curve is so borked like it is now, they feel like they have the pick of the litter on who they want to hire. And that has implications not only for really young people coming into tech, but it has implications for people who are older in tech because, I mean, your whole podcast is based on this, but ageism for me is something I saw, almost before I was 40, probably at 39. And I had to take some steps.
More and more.
Yeah, to avoid it or to sort of navigate and learn how to avoid those pitfalls.
lot to contend with out there. And I think, like you said, AI just puts it all on steroids. It's like, where are these jobs going? How do we prepare for them? How do we train the next generation, whether that's career changers or, like you said, people coming out of school who are younger? It's kind of the wild, wild west in my estimation. It's like, okay, no one really knows what to do, where to go. And yet we all know that it's like almost every company seems like a tech company now. Like, what isn't tech, right? And
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's very
so,
tricky. It's like, when I got out of school, I wanted to be a game developer, like work on video games. And it was quite a niche market because I'm old as dirt. So this is happening in like the late 90s, right? Or actually more like mid 90s. There was not 2,000 jobs in the game industry to go apply for. They were really hard to find. You kind of had to know a guy or know a person who worked in that. And so I took a terrible, terrible job as a contract game tester for Electronic Arts. And this was back when they had a studio in Bellevue. And the working conditions were just, they're not like I'm working on an oil drilling platform in the middle of nowhere, right? It's not exactly like,
it's a scale.
Deadliest
Yeah.
Catch or something like that. But like the last 30 days of my contract were no days off. It was 30 days in a row. My
No
schedule
way.
was 10 a.m. to 4 a.m. I got 6 hours off, and we had a 30-minute lunch break, and we weren't allowed to eat at our desk, in a conference room, in the hallway, or anywhere on campus. So we had to actually leave, eat, and get back in 30 minutes. And at some point, we just kind of like unionized together and said, this is ridiculous. Like, I can't eat food, and you have me here till 4 a.m. Like, what the hell am I supposed to do? And so they finally started catering and bringing in food for us. But it's like, so it's weird because the way I grew up in this industry, it wasn't easy when I got out. People were printing, even in the 90s, they were printing their resumes on like a 6-pack carry of beer. And then they would like send beer to game developers and then look at the outside and be like, oh, that's Brian's resume. Oh, what a creative, interesting thing. So like you had to do something unique to get attention.
Yeah.
And the only way I got it is by being a game tester first and then sort of migrating into doing game development. But so now
so like 996, that was the vibe. Man, 996
like,
in the 90s.
Yep. Like, and for game industry, that is very seasonal. Like people work really long hours in the summer to get games ready for Black Friday, like for the holiday season. And so, we would never see the sunlight during the summer because that was crunch time. And so it kind of feels like it's coming back to that. But like, there's a lot of people that haven't gone through that because of the jobs they started in.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like I have not come into contact with many people who could tell me that they suffered such punishing work conditions in the tech industry. Like you do hear of people, especially at startups, who work night and day and do all the things. But what you just described as a contractor is like beyond the pale. I can't even imagine like go off campus for 30 minutes. That is wild. And
it was, they could treat you like dirt because, you were easily replaceable and the skills you needed to do that job weren't that high. But there were days where I would press like on a PlayStation, like select and start in random combinations for like 6 hours in a row. It was very mind numbing, very draining work. We had fans pointed at the PlayStations because they would overheat because they were on too long because we were playing for so long, And so it's like, it sounds cool when you're young to get paid to play games. And then you look at what you actually have to do. And it's like, man, it's a little bit of mind numbing work. But, there was a summer in there where we made a lot of money for working in tech. And now it attracted people into school. And now they get out and suddenly they're like, wait, it's not summer. Well, I need pants. What are pants? Right. Like, well, they've only seen sort of what summer looks like in the tech industry. So I feel for people, but I think you need to do a lot of creative things if you're getting out of school right now. Like you need to have a project and record a 10-part video YouTube series on your project and the trade-offs you made and almost make it into what like a master's thesis that is a video interview so people can learn a lot more about the way you work and the way you think. You have to kind of find creative ways to stand out more so than you had to before because it's not a summer.
You should get 6-pack it used to be a 6-pack in your resume, and now it's like we need a full blown like thesis. Oh my gosh, and that sucks. I mean, I hate the concept of people working for free, especially like before they actually get any sort of job, right? That sucks. But you're right. We have a time where people have the pick of the litter. They can have whoever they want. They can look for what recruiters call the purple squirrel, right? The like unicorn candidate, because it's just supply and demand. And so people really do have to go to great lengths to stand out. So tell us a little bit about how you advise your clients to do just that.
Yeah. So there's kind of probably a multimodal answer to this question, depending on whether you have experience or not, right? And so for a young person, it's just really hard to stand out when there's 600 other people in your class that also have a CS degree that are getting out of school. It's the least common denominator. And it's like, and what we teach at most schools is not exactly what we're looking for, because it doesn't necessarily emulate working on like a really large code base. For example, if you're an engineer and having to worry about scalability, like those things are hard to create artificially, like in a school. So we want people who can work really well together, and people who take feedback well, and people who learn, and people who work really hard. And so anything you can do to demonstrate those behaviors when you're younger is good. You know, having an internship is always a good idea. You know, the bigger companies are filling their intern slots like during the holidays for the following summer. So it's like, if you want to have an intern like in summer 2026, like now, right now, as we're like recording, this is a good time to start looking for those internships, especially if they're bigger companies, because the bigger companies often they're paid. And so those can be great opportunities. But even if you don't, you know, it is no longer the case that having this diploma, you know, framed in this thing that's hanging on the wall is the thing that's going to get you a job. That is the thing that allows you to have some basic skills so that you can go create something unique to help you get an interview. Networking, I think, is the other thing. You know, it's kind of a 4-letter word for a lot of people, especially younger folks. They're like, this is gross. Why is LinkedIn so cringe? You know? And it's like, I get it, but like, as I stand here, like the reason I got my job at Microsoft, and the reason I got my job at Zillow, and the reason I got my job at Coinbase, all 3 jobs that I had in the second half of my career are all related to because I knew somebody. It's not because I was smart. I mean, yeah, exactly. Right. And it's like, yeah, a lot of really successful people don't want to admit that, because they don't want to diminish like their own badassery and be like, but like anyone who's hyper successful, right? I mean, come on, forget about it. Like even Bill Gates, right? Like he went to a school like Lakeside, right? Which is like in the area. And that computer was one of the only computers that had a connection to a mainframe at that time, because the mothers group like that ran the computer club was like just tenacious about getting this connection. You take Bill Gates and you put him at another school, he may still come up to be the person he is, but not as fast as he did.
Right.
So
that's such a
so there
point.
Is this.
People acknowledge that.
So it's like, yeah, like there's this preparation and opportunity, right, is luck. And it's like people say that because they don't want to admit that they didn't control their destiny. I'm like, right. Yeah, but opportunity is just kind of a fancy multi-syllable word for luck, right? It's like, come on, like, you know, I did a contract work for Microsoft for 3 or 4 years. I found a manager, like a sponsor of me doing like the person on Microsoft that cared about my work. And his name is Carl. And I still talk to him to this day. He really liked what I did. And he saw a lot of himself in me at a younger age. And he actually wanted an analyst on his team. And guess what? HR said he couldn't have an analyst. So what they did is he lied and he made it an analytics PM job so that he could hire me as an analyst. And so I already knew I had the job basically like before I interviewed, but like, I probably don't pass that interview if Carl's not the one sponsoring the position. Right. You know, and this happens all the time.
Works. This is the way the world works. And it sucks. It sucks that it's not a meritocracy. It sucks that some people have a leg up by virtue of privilege, but this is where we are. So you got to fight with everything you can to get your shot, right? And people, when they get it, I think need to really continually be looking out for others to bring them up behind them. Because I think, you know, to what is the saying, to much who is given, much is owed. Like, you know, I want to see people really taking that to heart. But you're totally right. It's a mess out there. Getting a job is a nightmare. They're like, hey, entry level position, like 3 to 7 years of experience. Like, how the hell do you get that first experience? And, you know,
oh my gosh,
right? Like,
It's
It's
crazy. Like
crazy.
my wife just opened an entry level BI analyst job that requires 1 year of experience and got
Mm,
1,400 applications in 2 business days. And so it's
dude,
like,
it's a
and
mess.
so, it's very fascinating to see it on the hiring manager side for entry level role right now, because I haven't hired an entry level person because I haven't worked in tech as a like a W-2 employee for like 3 years now. But it's fascinating to be like, HR is reviewing the applicants and then sending 50 people a day to her. And it's like, well, if there's 1,400 people, like that's going to take like 7 weeks. What do we do to speed things up? So like the supply demand curve is that crazy. Suddenly you can't just have the minimum requirements be 1 year of experience because you can't interview that many people. So now what do you do? Like what are the ethical and morally acceptable ways to filter down such a gigantic applicant pool so that you can go talk with these people? Like, should you only interview the people that applied on the same day? Like, you could do that, but is that fair that someone didn't see it same day and they applied the next day? Like, that doesn't feel very fair. So
I
it's
agree with you, but
fascinating to see what that
do
looks like.
companies even care? Do they even care about it being
Yeah,
fair?
like that's another thing.
Some
It's
do.
like,
Yeah.
some do, so for younger people, like be unique, be creative. For people who have depth and experience, like the clients that I work with usually have more than 3 years of experience. I usually kind of push away people that have less than 3 years and saying, I don't know if it's a good idea to work with me because I don't know if you'll see results. Like, we don't have anything on your resume. It's a blank sheet of paper. Like, what do we do? But for people who
In
have
this era,
depth,
you're right. Yeah.
yeah, it becomes like, hey, what are you uniquely good at? Not to treat the interview like a test, but to say, hey, how do you describe yourself as this uniquely shaped puzzle piece? Get into an interview and say, this is the environment I will thrive in, and this is the kind of person I am. And that may end up with you not getting an offer, but in the fact that you're willing to share more details about what makes you unique than other people who are scared to do that because they treat it like a test, the more likely you will find someone who will fall in love with like what it is you offer specifically and how that's different than other people, And so, yeah, it's like if Maureen goes and looks for a job, like Maureen should go find Maureen shaped jobs. So when I work with a client, it's like, okay, well, what shape does Maureen take in the form of the way she does her work? Is she really good at executing tasks? Is it more strategic? Is it more relationship building or influencing other people? The more we can share what we're looking for, the more we can help them figure out if we're the right person for that. Now, that ignores like mortgage payments and having to pay for babysitters and things like that. So, we have to think through that thing. But when we share more and we become like an advocate alongside the interviewer, suddenly it's not so adversarial. It's like, no, let's figure out together whether I'm the right person for this job. And that can be quite refreshing as an interviewer to hear that, because you don't get the sense I'm saying the right things just to get you to say yes to me.
Exactly. I completely agree with that. It makes so much sense. And that's when I was interviewing back in the day, I would employ that same tactic. I took it as, hey, this is a two-way street. I'm not in a, disempowered position. We want to find the right fit. And that's sort of how I guided myself through these interviews. And I feel like it gives you this sort of pep in your step. That's kind of a weird expression, but it gives you like this little edge that I think is really helpful mentally, right? Where you're like, hey, dude, I know what I'm doing. I'm a good hire. Let's see if you're good enough for me, right? Because the power imbalance so much, the power is so much on the employer's side in these situations. And I think we need to take a little bit of it back. It's going to give us some agency. It's going to make us feel better. And to your point, you're going to find the place that's right for you if you share more of you. I've also since learned that you can get yourself into some hot water too if you're having these interviews with people who are asking questions that seem completely like chill, right? Like, oh, do you have kids? Some of that stuff you actually shouldn't ask. So you fall into the potential pitfall of revealing something that could be used against you. Like, I that's the one thing that I say with a little hesitation on that front, because I'm such an open book. I'm like, oh, I'll tell you anything. But I very deliberately never mentioned my children or thoughts of children or anything or family at all in interviews because I knew it wouldn't help me. So you have to just be strategic about what you reveal. But yeah, it's I think that's an excellent point of view. And I think people should really dive into that because, like you said, you have to differentiate yourself. And ultimately, you'll find a place that's going to like you for you and be the place where you could contribute. But
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to say, right? The
right.
reality is like, we are like just to like set expectations, it is a really terrible time to be looking for a job, like pretty much in any industry, but in tech it's pretty extra awful right now. It's like throwing darts at a dartboard, like in the dark. Like you don't even know when you don't get the job, like were you like 1 millimeter away from the bullseye and someone else hit it dead even, or did you miss the dartboard entirely and you hit some dude in the temple and he's really pissed at you, right? Like you don't know. And so like what can happen here is you can let your lack of outcomes can start to impact your identity, right? And this is very normal, but it's something we have to be aware of and fight and say, no, I want my identity. I want to lean into my identity and let it drive the outcomes that I'm looking for. We have to kind of reverse that flow. But to do that, you got to have some clarity, man. It's like, I mean, I've done this my whole career. If I were to come up with requirements, right, for my next job, most of the time I had like 2 or 3 things, like make this amount of money, like not have to drive more than an hour to work, like, and not hate my boss, like in the interview. And it's like, come on, man. Do you know the list we have when we go look for a house? Like, it's like 35 bullet points, right? It's like, well, yard this size or close to a park and good school and not this much. And we never get everything, right? Because like if it ticks off 34 of the boxes, it will never tick off the budget box because you can't get this much things for that amount of money. That's how we make these lists, right? So then it's like, well, wait a minute. You spend more waking time, most of us, in the workplace, like working, than you do in your house, like not working, right? Because most of us, because you'd have to be awake for probably 16 or 17 hours for it to be the other way around. So it's like, well, wait a minute. If it's that important and I'm walking around with 3 bullet points, like, is that enough? The answer is no. Like to your point, Maureen, you got to treat these interviews like career Tinder. Right? It's like you got to have some non-negotiables. You got to decide, would you swipe right on them? Not just would they swipe right on you,
Absolutely.
And you have to do this. And if you don't, it is like buying a house sight unseen. And then you're like, oh my God, it's next to a toxic waste dump. Now, what do I do? Like, no one's going to buy it. I hate my life. It's like, yes, you have a job, but I don't want you to have to get a job where you have to go look for another job in 3 to 6 months and do this terrible process all over again. It's the worst thing in the world. And no one gets good at it. You know why? Because we get to 7 out of 10 on the interview skills. Then we get 1 offer and then we take it and then we stop.
Yep. Oh my God.
What other skill set do we get to just barely mediocre and then we just quit at a time when we could get better? So what makes me really excited to help clients is I have 40, 50 clients at a time at all these different points in the process. I'm running all these experiments to see what works well in interviews and what's better and like how to get people to want to talk with you if you don't know them, if they're mutual friends, or what to do on a resume or questions to ask in an interview. I become an aggregator of best practices so that I can share that with people and they don't have to sort of start from scratch. Because that's just terrible. Like, who wants to do that? Like, I don't want anyone to struggle through that. And then now is a time where it's really easy to struggle.
Yeah. And like you said, the psychological impact, especially if you're out of work for a long time and the long-term unemployment rates are going up by a lot. There are tons of people facing this. And it's so demoralizing and stressful, to say the least. And I think it really does chip away at your self-esteem. And it's really easy to get into a position, like you said, where you find yourself with an offer in hand and it only meets a couple of your criteria, but you are just like, God damn it, I am so freaking tired. Like,
you're exhausted, right?
Right? And they know that.
Imagine you're renting a tiny apartment and you're just like, all my crap's in storage and I'm paying $1,000 a month for 3 storage units. It's like, oh my God, I just want to sleep on my own couch. Like, what am I going to do? I totally get it. I think there's this sense that we only look for jobs when we need one. And I think one of the things this market is probably teaching us is hey, this is probably something we should think about doing a little bit of networking every week while we're employed. And maybe once a year. Take an interview just to practice, to keep your skills sharp. Like, take out your axe and sharpen it, practice chopping down a tree and then put it away. And then when you need it, you'll be ready. And you never know. Sometimes you'll find your dream job while you already are employed. And the power you have when you don't need to take an offer is like a power everyone should have at some point in their career.
Yeah, that's my definition of fuck you money. It's like, I don't
Right,
need,
exactly.
it's like I can walk away. I don't have to take something that's subpar. I don't have to sign up to be exploited if I know that's what's going to happen, right? And I think, it's so infrequent that people find themselves in a position where they're like, they could just say peace out, right? And it's either due to exhaustion or bills to pay or whatever. And I think, I can give a personal example. Like I ended up taking a job from a company that had started out the whole interview process with, hey, just want to get this out of the way. Let's figure out what like your salary expectations are, because if they're not aligned with what we provide, then like this is a waste of time. And I was like, hell yeah, I'm tired of the job search. I want to make sure I'm not wasting my time. And so I gave them, and obviously I know some people would suggest like never throw out the first number. Trust me, I tried not to throw out the first number. But eventually I was like, okay, I'm not telling them what I made in my last job. I'm telling them what I expect to be paid in my future job. And there is a huge difference there in my mind. So I'm like, okay, here's the basement of what I would be willing to be paid. So I go through this freaking long interview process with all these people. It's such a long drawn out thing, but they've told me from the beginning, you're the one we want. We're just like getting the pieces in place. I'm like, great, cool. So it turns out I was the one they wanted. However, they thought that they would come in with an offer 20% under the basement that I had left as basement. And I was like, fuck you guys. Like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And then you talk to the HR person. The HR person, of course, is trained to say like, oh, but you will meet this better earning potential because of your comp package and all the incentives for the sales, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you don't really, I mean, in retrospect, I wish I had gone and like literally gone on LinkedIn and called salespeople or called partners people and tried to reach out and say like, hey, what's going on here? Because the first fucking day I showed up, what did I find out? No one is hitting quota. Everyone's screwed. And I'm like, God damn it. So I was just so tired, and I liked the other aspects of I was so tired and I liked the other aspects of what the job was providing. And the manager was seemingly great and all that I was willing to overlook that they screwed me over at the one time I had leverage. So if they do that to you when they're dating you as a job applicant, what the hell do you expect they're going to do to you when you're an employee? And sure enough, on day one, it was the bottom fell out. And I was like, this place fucking sucks on so many levels. So it's terrible.
No, I get
and
it.
So the cost. Yeah.
Like, I'll tell you what I tell people to do, when it comes to the salary question. I don't think this is right or wrong. It is just experiments that I've been running. Like, people in tech have been indoctrinated into using A/B tests to kind of test everything. Netflix literally tests 8 different versions of the thumbnail picture that they show for a show, and that is optimized by region. So the thumbnail you see like in California is different than the one you might see in the Northeast, because people in the Northeast are more likely to click on this show when there's a different thumbnail. Like, that's how detailed they get. So I'm like, okay, when human behavior is involved, and we make no mistake, when we're interviewing, we want to influence the human behavior of the interviewer to say like, thumbs up, we want, Maureen on our team. We need to test it. And so when it comes to the salary thing, there's a couple things that I mentioned to people. It's like, these are the 3 tips that I would give people in general. So one is, the recruiter you're talking with, who's usually answering that question, you're probably never going to talk to that person again. So this idea that you have to be their best friend, like, just is total bullshit. Like, you're never going to see this human ever again. And that's a good thing, because sometimes they can be a little slimy, or, or they're not that good at their job, or maybe
they
they're
don't
amazing.
know what their job requires, right? Like, it's not
they don't.
their purview. They are the conduit. They say yes, go or no go to the person who's.
But like, they're not deciding whether you get the job or not, right? Like, someone has told them, get Maureen for the cheapest amount you can. Like, they're not going to convert a yes to a no. That's not how this works.
Right.
Like, unless it's like a really tiny startup. So
totally right.
1, they don't have to be your friend. 2, anytime you get a request, the 2 things I suggest you do beyond remembering they're not your friend is, one is a psychological tactic called anchoring, which is to say you should blurt out a number that like is 9 times or 5 times larger than what you want. And so if I'm trying to get a job for 200,000, I might, and they say, well, what's your number? be like, name like $1 million, like intentionally give them a number that's so ridiculously high. So there's some psychological tactics that when you come down from $1 million down to 250, in your head, you've dropped 75%, right? Like from the number, even though the first number was never realistic to begin with. And so in negotiations, mentioning an artificially high number that we both agree is outside of reality actually leads to the other person feeling like they're getting a better deal, even if compared to not sharing any number at all. So I would say, well, you're asking what I want to make. What I want to make is $1 million. Ha ha ha. Right. And then you both kind of joke and say, well, from what I know about the role right now, and the research that I've done, I'm expecting a range between this and this. The other thing I would also say is like, there's this term in tech that we use called comp ratio, which HR people know and recruiters should know, but not everybody does. It is your salary divided by the median salary for that level in that particular area. So it's like a floating point number. Most recruiters want to bring you in at 0.8. So they want to bring you in 20% below the median for the average for the people at that level, like at a senior band.
Job band, right?
Yeah. And they want to bring you in there so they have 20% headroom to keep giving you raises before you are making more than the average, because then it's really hard to give you money. So the idea is like, if they bring you in too high, you may only get like a 1% raise. And then at some point you may be a retention problem. Yeah. So they're creating space. So what you want to do when they ask you for a number is you say, can you tell me what the 0.8 comp ratio is for this level in this location? So respond with them with a single number, because if they'll give you that number, then what you can do is then you can multiply that number by 1.25, because 80% to get to 100% is 25% higher. And then you add 20% on either side, and then you have the salary range. And now you, Maureen, can say, is this range okay with me? Now, you didn't say you would accept 0.8 as a comp ratio, but by using a number that recruiters want to bring you in at. So it's not surprising to me that you named a number and then they went 20% lower, because in their mind, they have this 0.8 comp ratio approach to like trying to bring you in. Most tech people will try and bring you in 5% lower than your minimum number. So the other thing is like, just by mentioning 0.8 and saying like, what is the 0.8 comp ratio? And if they don't know what it is, suddenly you have knowledge they don't. And now you actually have like, you come in as like, wait a minute, like Maureen's no idiot here. Like she knows some terms I don't know. Be like, okay, well, what's the median of salary for the range? And you can do the math and say, I think it's still worth going through the interview, but there's some things I might find out about this job that may adjust upwards or downwards, like what my floor is.
That's really brilliant.
And we'll do that later. So that can be effective. It doesn't work on everybody, but demonstrating, what comp ratio is a good way to sort of let them know that you know what you're doing.
I love that. I had never heard of that before, and that sounds so incredibly useful. That's awesome. So everybody flag that. You got to figure this out and come in armed so people know you know what you're talking about. To be clear, I did balloon what I was hoping for as my base salary, but
which you can
I
do.
didn't say $1 million, so I really screwed myself on that. But that is, I also wonder, and I obviously don't speak for all women, but I feel like when I have asked for salary raises or, tried to negotiate, I feel like it's not often that it's taken well. And so I wonder if that tactic would work, and what you've seen in your clients, if women throw out the joke of like, oh, I'd like $1 million, and how that's received versus men, if there is a difference.
I don't think there is, as long as the number is like mutually agreeable that like it's not in the realm of reality, right? And so I think in a way, I think anchoring might work just as well, if not slightly better than naming a range, because like, there are a fair amount of people who feel like if a woman says X and a man says X, it will probably be interpreted differently. That's probably true, because, we are all biased in some way, even if we don't want to be. And recruiters are not immune from bias. They're just as biased as the average person walking around. And so that's probably a better reason to not mention a salary range at all, and to instead say $1 million, what's the 0.8 comp ratio? And then let them, and say the research I've done on like levels.fyi, which is a common website we use for tech salaries, is, the total comp for this role is what, 300,000, 150,000, whatever the number is. is that within range for this? Or if you don't even want to mention the number, just ask the comp ratio question. Because if they have to admit they don't know something, about how they sound, like it puts you in a position of power where you get to educate the recruiter about something. It's like, wow, that's setting you up to be like a little more like you're not as naive as maybe as they were hoping you were.
You're a formidable opponent in this. They realize you're
Yeah.
not playing checkers, you're playing chess, right? Like that. I think that's an
Yeah.
important shift, and I think it can really help people out. That is an awesome point. Thank you so much for sharing that. The other thing I learned recently that is very fascinating to me, and I haven't corroborated this with other HR leaders, but what I heard was when you look at a salary range that's posted on the internet, it's not as you would think. So, for example, when I saw a post for a job that said, hey, we pay between like 150 and 250 for this job, I go into it thinking, okay, I have experience, I'm killing it in this or whatever. So I'm assuming like, oh, I'll probably be getting an offer that's towards like 200 to 250 of this range. That's what I'm going to aim for. When the reality is that's the band of all people at that level, the pay that they have at the organization. That is what they are required to post. And so thereby it is not like an acknowledgement of like, oh, we have up to 250K. It's budget. Like, no,
Yeah.
this is just like
No.
median, right? Like this is just the scale.
No, it is. And it's even worse than that. Like if you heard of this term like malicious compliance, like this is what companies are doing, right? Like they're being maliciously compliant by saying, okay, well, at company X, we only have one job title at software engineer. We don't have seniors. We don't have staffs. So we will just give you, so you're going to make somewhere between 50 cents and $1 million, like in this range. And then they're maliciously compliant with the law, right? The other thing to know is that there's a lot of geography variance. So if you live in like Bobsville, Arkansas, I don't know, that's probably not a place, right? But if you like live in a really low cost of living area, then that upper band is not in the realm of reality. Like, like at a Coinbase, they had 3 comp zones and there was about a 10%, 15% variance for each. So comp zone 1 is going to be New York City, San Francisco, and the Seattle area, like once it upgraded from comp zone 2 to 1. And a lot of times that's what zip code you live in, or the radius of how far away you are from a major metropolitan area. That's what determines the higher range for those salary
Don't tell
bands.
them your zip code, right? Don't tell them where you live. Yeah.
Yeah, or if you want to be a little morally flexible, like I might be moving to the Bay Area, I have relatives in Seattle, I might be moving soon, and they'd be like, oh, well, our salary range is different for Seattle than it is for whatever. Okay, well, why don't you tell me what the range is for Seattle and where it is now? Because I want to know if I do move, like, can I afford to move, right? Like, this move might be happening in the next 6 months. And then the other thing is, for tech companies specifically, there's a lot of compensation that is not in that range. So, people look at this 150 to 250, that's just the salary. In an engineering leadership role, it's not uncommon to get more than 50% of your total compensation from like stock. And so, I'm happy to share my comp details. Like my comp, Coinbase was off the chart, crazy high. Like I joined making $200,000 a year salary and $275,000 a year in stock. I was making $475, and then day 10, they bumped up the stock for all people at my level, and so it retroactively applied to me. So then I'm not making $275 a year in stock. I'm making $400 a year in stock. So then my salary goes to $600. My comp goes to $600,000 a year. Then I'm there 6 months. And then they give us a cost of living increase. And then Seattle moves from comp zone 2 to comp zone 1. Now I'm making $638,000. I'm like, what are you getting all this money from to pay me? In fact, that was around the time that I was like, I need to hoard this money because I think you're spending so much money on employees that I think I'm worried that like, where is the plan to be able to afford to pay us all this much money, which is a great problem to have. But I guess my point is, that salary, not only should you not necessarily expect the top, but if you are in a high cost of living area and you're in a tech role, you might actually double that number for total compensation. And so when you look at that number, you're right, it has very little to do with what you'll actually make. It could be way lower, or it could be a multiple of the top end of that number, depending on whether stocks or bonuses or, and those kind of things are involved. So
I'm retroactively pissed that I didn't go into engineering, although I would never have had the ability, I don't believe, just based on my natural gift.
Like,
I'm good at everything.
They don't pay you that much money because they're nice people. They pay you that much money because like it is a really difficult place to be successful. The things that would normally hold you back from a promotion can get you fired in companies like that. If you don't have a good PM, or you don't have a good charter, or you don't have a good team, or you're not generating business impact, you're getting paid that much. They expect more in return, right? It is more like 996 and working lots of hours. And you can't use your charter as a reason you didn't generate revenue for the company. You have to know what you're being asked to do in exchange for that amount of money. It's not the same. It's different.
It's a very strong point, and I'm sure my job was cushed by a mile compared to what you just described.
I mean, you can find pockets. I never wanted the demand of like FANG level, high level companies, but the tier right below it, there was something appealing about like knowing that if you were good, you could leave and go to a FANG level company, because so these people couldn't treat you kind of like dirt, like the top level companies could, because a really good person could leave and go get paid more elsewhere. So I use that to find really good jobs that were a good fit for me.
So smart. Let's dig into that, because I've been thinking to myself, gosh, these top companies, they're treating employees, like you said, like dirt, and they are, exploiting. They're openly exploiting at this point. They're just like, screw all of you, we're in charge. I think maybe it's like retroactive anger for the return for the remote work era, and people kind of, throwing their weight around after people started going back to the office, right? With all these. And now they're coming out with the RTO mandates. They're, pulling baits and switches on people all the time. So I wondered, hey, what about looking at companies? If I'm an employee, if I'm a job applicant, if I'm looking to get into tech, like, should I be targeting specific sort of sizes of companies that are below that sort of FANG group?
Maybe. I mean, it really has to do with understanding, if you're old enough. And I say this, young people kind of get bent out of shape when I say old enough. So I want to explain what I mean here by this. We talked about this before the show started, but, I can't look at someone who's 25 and expect them to have 10 years of leadership experience. Like, we have a math problem there, right? Like, that doesn't exist. And so it's like, that's not an insult to like how sharp that person is or how business savvy they are. But, if you become a founder at 28, right? Like, you've had to microwave your leadership skills in a way that older people have not been expected to have to do. So we, as more mature, more experienced people, have more lived experience than a lot of people who may be 3 or 4 levels above us in a company. And often a lot of founders don't play nicely with others, which is why they go start their own damn company to begin with, is because they're like, I can't work in this environment. I'm going to take my ball and go home and play my own game with other people, like, this kind of thing. And so when it comes to like finding whether you want a small company or a big company, it's important to know what environment you're going to thrive in. If you're versatile and you hate doing the same job day in and day out, a big company is a terrible decision, because as companies get bigger, the breadth of our work gets narrower and we're expected to go a lot deeper. But, a lot of people in tech love learning new things. Well, spoiler alert, like if you become some deep expert in low latency data storage, and you work at Google for like 3 or 4 years, you're going to run out of things to learn, because as you become like more and more of an expert, there's fewer and fewer people you can learn from, because once you're 95th percentile, what you're saying is only 5% of the people that do this work probably know more than I do to increase my depth. And sometimes we just get sick of that and we want to go find something else. And so this happened to me. I liked becoming an expert and then starting over and learning something new. So you go look at my career. Oh my God, it's a joke. It's like a pile of sand. It's like, I was game developer for 5 years, and then I was a .NET developer, and a SQL developer, and a data analyst, a business analyst, analytics PM, feature PM, like software engineer, engineering manager, and now I'm a career coach. That's like 10 job disciplines in like 26 years. I loved learning, but I'm not going to advance higher in leadership when I love doing that, right? I have this very wide, stable base of sand. I would probably really like working at a small company where I got to do lots of different things. Some people are terrified by that. So if you want to become a deep expert and you want to be able to work on like world-class scale problems in tech, then yes, bigger tech is much better. Ironically, companies like Meta and Amazon, who are known for managing people out more actively, if you've been paying attention to the news, Meta now evaluates performance twice a year instead of once a year. So they kick out more people. Well, that means they have to hire more, right? To backfill the people. So if you want to get into big tech and see what it's like, Meta and Amazon aren't that bad of a choice because they're aggressively hiring relatively more frequently because they get rid of more people on average because they have like a hole in the bottom of their bucket. So they got to pour more water in the top, right? So
might not be fun, but you're right. That would be a path.
But it would be a good learning experiment. Like throw yourself into that, see if you love it. I would be terrible, like at an Amazon. Like I would just like, it's just the some policies they have in place. The fact that you can be your performance can be at risk and you don't have to tell your employer, like your employee. So like I'm your manager. And so it's like you can be in what's called focus. I think it's focus. And so you're like, I'm not legally required to tell you that I think your employment is at risk. And then you try to move to another team. And then I say, oh, Maureen, you're actually in focus. You can't do this. You're like, so like that policy in and of itself is just, it doesn't align with the way I think about being a people-focused engineering leader and being like, no, Maureen needs to know if her performance is at risk or if she's not working to my expectations. So it's like that kind of policy, it just doesn't, I can tell I wouldn't be successful in an environment like that. Like the idea that my boss isn't telling me that I suck and that like I could have done something about that. Like that's just not an environment I'm going to be successful in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
and not only
the morality and the ethics of it are different. Right. But it's just like, I just don't want to, that's not the right place for me.
That sounds absolutely horrific. I had not heard about that. So basically you're on a PIP without knowing. And you can't.
It's not really a PIP per se. It's like the early stage of a PIP. You know, sometimes we call it like off track at a company. So it's like the beginning, but it's like every company I've worked at, HR is involved and the employee knows the minute the off track thing happens. And it's a lot of work on the on the manager. I got to track things weekly and do all this other kind of stuff. But I don't shy away from that work because the right thing to do is like Maureen needs to know if she reports to me, right? Like whether she's meeting my expectations. And so crystal clear expectations and regular actionable feedback are the table stakes for being a good leader. I just am suspicious of an environment that doesn't agree with that sort of baseline approach to leadership. So I don't think it would be a good place for me.
Yeah, me neither. You know? That's brutal.
Yeah. I would say we talked about this before the show started, but it's like young people have never been old. And so, and so this is something we have to remind ourselves when we're older is like, how can we expect a young person to understand what we're going through when they haven't gone through it themselves? Like it is guaranteed lack of empathy and not because of anything other than they haven't had to run into issues that we've run into. And so when it comes to coaching people who are over 40 or over 50 or over 60, we have to remember the things that are probably going through their head while we're in the interview and they're interviewing us. And those things are, Maureen wants too much money, right? Maureen won't stay very long. She's going to retire, and go move to Cabo in like 12 months or whatever. She refuses to work for someone who's 20 years younger than her. She wants promotions really quickly. These are kind of the common phrases. So we know that some of those thoughts are illegal to say out loud, but it doesn't mean they're not thinking them, probably because we thought them when we were their age. Like this is the benefit of experience. So we have to come up with talking points that are the inverse of those unspoken thoughts that are going through their head. So what do I coach people who are older? Have energy when you show up in an interview so that you don't come across as like a tired old person that needs a nap at 2:00, right? Like to say something like, hey, I've had your job before. I don't want your job. Like I really like getting work done. Like make it clear that even though you probably could do their job, you don't want it. Like you don't want that stress. You want to do your work, mention something like, hey, I'm looking for a company I can stay at for the next 5 to 7 years so that they don't think you want to leave in 1 to 2. And then when it comes to working with younger people, be like, I love being around people at every different age group of the entire spectrum because there's so many pitfalls I fell into that I would love to help other people avoid. You're like, well, wait a minute. Now you're painting this narrative with your messaging and positioning that you're getting Maureen for a gigantic discount. You're getting like a director of PM level experience, and you only have to pay them PM2 level salary. And they're happy with it because it's less responsibility. There's a way to show a younger hiring manager or a younger interview, like the gigantic benefit they get from hiring people who have 20 years experience in their field. Like, I mean, gosh, some of these people, like they were legal drinking age like 4 years ago. It's like of course they won't have as much experience as we have.
Yeah.
That's okay. And as long as I don't come in with high ego.
Right.
Yeah, they could be. And they could be posturing because they're nervous because we know so much more than they do. Maybe they read a book that we authored when they were like growing up, like learning this field. I've worked on games that are in museums now. It's like, oh my gosh, you want to feel old. Work on a game that's in a museum. Like,
wow. That is wild. Excellent advice, though. You got to come in knowing what the other side's probably thinking and, being a little bit honestly, just having a little empathy for the other side, too, because I think that would be intimidating. If I were a younger hiring manager and I saw someone who came in who has done my job for decades or has led teams or whatever, I would feel maybe a little out over my skis. And so, flattery will get you everywhere. And also make sure that you are telling them you intend to learn from them too. Not that you're going to come in there and tell them what to do. And this is how I've done it.
Like you've been 26, right? We've all been 26 if we're 40. Like they have not been 40. Like we have to. And are they going to say some things that, probably indicate a lack of maturity? Of course they are. They're not mature in that way yet. That's okay. The goal is just that we help them see the benefits of hiring us and de-risk the fears that they have, right? If we can do those things and we can show them that we're high energy and we're still excited and we have a lot of work left we want to provide and business impact, that goes a pretty long way to feeling like you're a good fit for a company.
Hell yeah. And we got to control what we can control. And all of that is entirely controllable. So everybody has to work on their mindset. Brian, this has been phenomenal. I've learned so much. I know my audience is going to absolutely eat this up because so many actionable insights in this episode already. I'm thinking of all of them and I'm like bursting with energy and excitement about it. So where can people find out more about you, connect to you, learn all about what you offer?
Yeah. So 3 years ago, I pivoted to career coaching, mostly for people in the tech industry. I have a really crappy landing page. It's not very good. If you go to refactorcoaching.com, it connects to my calendar so you can book intro chats. Like the best place to learn more about the type of work I do is actually like LinkedIn and then maybe like Googling my name because I've been on Maureen's podcast now. I've been on a lot of other podcasts. So you can search on Brian Pulliam in iTunes or Spotify. If you do Google me, there is another Brian Pulliam in Albuquerque in jail for murdering 2 people. That's not me. I don't have a neck tattoo. Like I showed Maureen my office. Like she can prove I wasn't in a jail cell. It's not me.
He's not in the big house.
I'm not in the big house. But like if you find the article in New York Times or like dice.com or today.com, anything related to tech career, you can find out a lot about me if you go online, including some podcasts where I go really deep with technical people about how I run experiments to help people be successful. So that's the best way. If you go to LinkedIn, my alias at the end of the URL is Brian K. Pulliam. And so connect with me or follow me there. And then people who mention hearing about me on your podcast, they'll get a discount if they sign up for a package with me, 20% off. So they just have to mention it when they sign up for the intro chat. So
that is absolutely fantastic. Brian, thank you so much.
Yeah, happy to be here.